I want to welcome you to this is the first in a series of events dealing with climate change that's being sponsored by Alaska Common Ground. I'm Dick Miley, I'm the chair of Alaska Common Ground. I'm glad to see all of you here. There are still some seats over on this side of the room. There's like 4 back there and a few scattered around for those that are just coming in or standing in the bar line. Tonight's discussion is focusing on Anchorage's recently adopted climate action plan. I'm pleased to see that we have a special guest in the audience tonight. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Mayor Ethan Berkowitz, wherever he is, he's somewhere out there, for enabling. Thank the mayor for enabling and directing the municipality to pursue the climate action plan. So thank you, Mayor Berkowitz. Alaska Common Ground is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that works to help Alaskans understand the major issues facing our state and reach a consensus or some common ground on them. I'd like to thank our co-sponsors for this event, the University of Alaska Anchorage, Municipality of Anchorage Solid Waste Services, the Alaska Center, the Anchorage Public Library, and the League of Women Voters. We are largely a volunteer organization, although there are expenses involved in preparing for and hosting events such as this. With that in mind, a big thank you for the financial support we received from Arctic Solar Ventures and Anchorage Solar. If there's any representatives of either of those groups in the audience, maybe stand up just so that if people are looking to have solar panels put on their house, you can talk to those folks from Arctic Solar Ventures or Anchorage Solar. And we also received a grant from the Alaska Conservation Foundation to help fund these events. We also owe a great deal of gratitude to 49th State Brewing for hosting this event, and you can thank them, as a number of people are, by purchasing beer, wine, or pizza. We also welcome your donations. Please consider making a donation. We're accepting donations at the door, or feel free to join Alaska Common Ground or donate to us through Pick, Click, and Give come January. Alaska Common Ground is planning additional events. We hope to see you at these, starting with a discussion of the state's fiscal situation that will occur here on Tuesday, December 10th. More information on that event is in your program and also online at our website and also on Facebook. We hope that you have an opportunity to participate in the discussion on the wall over here, where we're asking for input on the climate action plan and what you are already doing or plan to do regarding climate change in your own lives. And we thank Cami Dalton, Gretchen Nelson for putting that together with some help from Rebecca Wolf for setting it up. We also are pleased that our partner, the Anchorage Library, has a table in the back with books about climate change, and you're welcome to go back there and look at those and even check those out. This event is being recorded by Alaska Public Media, who will broadcast it on Addressing Alaskans. The video is being recorded by Jensen Hall Creative and streamed live on Facebook. Tonight we have an excellent group of speakers to discuss the topic. We encourage questions from the audience, but we request that you put your questions on cards. There were cards passed out, 3x5 index cards when you came in. So write your questions down on those cards, and there'll be people circulating through the audience to pick up cards during the evening. I'm happy to introduce tonight's moderator, Libby Roderick. Libby is with the University of Alaska Difficult Dialogues Initiative. She's an associate director of the Center for Advancing Faculty Excellence at UAA and vice chair of the Difficult Dialogues National Resource Center. She has co-authored and edited numerous books and articles on difficult dialogues. It's difficult to say difficult tonight, it seems. Libby is also an internationally recognized and award-winning singer and songwriter and recording artist whose music has been played on Mars as well as here on Earth. More on the background of Libby and all of our presenters appears in the pamphlet that was handed out when you came in. And with that, I'll turn it over to Libby. We're honored to have you here tonight to moderate tonight's event.
Thanks very much, Dick, and to all of our sponsors, and also to all of you for coming. We're very excited to see such a good crowd. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'd like to tell those of you who are standing, I know you might be waiting for drinks, but if you aren't, we have plenty of room for standing room only, and you can come over here or put yourself wherever you want to. There's also some seats that are available still in the crowd. So we're going to jump right in. I want to start with a recognition that we are on the sacred and traditional and unceded lands of the Dena'ina Nation. and folks who have put in 10,000 years of stewardship of the lands and waters and creatures in this area. So we'd really like to honor that and recognize, as we will in our presentation, that equity and justice as we move forward on climate issues is central to what we are about here. The plan for the evening is pretty simple. I'm going to show you a few slides, but we're going to have a short video that was created about the Climate Action Plan, I believe by students, if I remember rightly. And then we will have this fabulous panel, each of whom is going to speak briefly about the history of the Climate Action Plan, one person, about how it came together, and then what's in the plan itself for a much longer time. Throughout the evening, as was mentioned, you can ask questions, just pass them up. We have two wonderful people here who will collect them for us and bring them up. And so throughout the evening, if it makes sense, we'll be asking questions then there is a question and answer period at the end. And also we're allowed to stay after the session is over in this room to network and talk. There's an amazing amount of expertise in this room. I know a lot of you. So there's a lot of heavy hitters in the room, and this is just the first informational session about the Climate Action Plan. As was mentioned, we will have many more forums to come. So let's see. With that, we are going to start with something newish to me and to some of us, but it involves using your cell phones. We're going to start with a question to you. The question really is, when you think about the climate change or climate crisis, as the elders call it, what is the first word or a couple of words that comes to mind? And this involves using your cell phones, if you brought them. And we have a little bit of tech help that can wander around and help you if you need it to do this. But you go to www.menti.com, MENTI.com. Those of you who have cell phones, don't worry if you don't. This is just a kind of an informal poll. So go to menti.com, and then it will prompt you to put in 6 numbers as a code. The 6 numbers are right up here: 63, 35, 20. Right? When I tried to first do this, it took me forever, so take your time. And then it will prompt you again to ask you to enter a word, or I think you get 3 choices. 3 times you get to put in a word, or maybe even 2 words. And it'll show us, as you're doing it, which you are doing it, some of you, as we go along, what you're answering. And the words that are most frequently entered are largest, so we can kind of see an informal poll here of the kinds of things we're thinking about in terms of climate. So obviously at this point, fire, permafrost, melting, warming, scary, erosion, Minecraft. Sure you're in the right room? Urgent, emergency, future. So this is just a quick way to sort of get a scan of where our minds are as we start out. We good with that? Okay. So here we go into the video.
The thing I remember is that it always snowed by Halloween when I was a kid, when we would trick-or-treat in the snow. And now I have young children, and we're trick-or-treating in 50 degrees.
I mean, when I grew up here, living in Fairview, there we had snow. We'd always go up to the rooftops. And now we're just getting a little bit. Yeah, so there's drastic changes going on.
Our climate in the Arctic is changing at twice the rate of other regions in the world, and we have to confront that and we have to address that.
Alaska generates more greenhouse gases than any country in the world per capita.
Climate change is real, and we have a moral responsibility of dealing with it in a strong way.
We're supposed to be stewards of our environment, and environmental stewardship is a big part of our philosophy as Alaska Native people.
Because it's very important to me that the world starts to do something positive in this arena. We haven't been.
So we know the climate is changing, but the real question is, what are we going to do about it? The Anchorage Climate Action Plan is our city's answer to that question.
The future can be very different depending on how people as a whole get their act together or not.
Thousands of cities have already created climate action plans. This is really a new, proactive way of city planning that creates benefits such as economic development, new jobs, better air quality, and energy independence.
We're not just talking about helping the environment, but also reducing energy costs for both people and businesses in Anchorage.
The Municipality of Anchorage has already started. One of the things we're doing is we've converted over 12,000 streetlights to LEDs, and we're saving over $780,000 a year.
The municipality is taking steps to combat climate change, but lasting change must involve us, the diverse people and businesses that call Anchorage home.
Our next generation needs to understand what they can do in small ways to create a healthier environment. And I feel like it's beyond climate change and resiliency. It's about creating a healthy planet that can take care of itself.
So here are a few things that you can do to start making a difference today.
This is our time. This is when we confront the challenge.
It's not something that is just for one specific group of people, because in the end, it's going to take all of us.
Like he said, it's going to take all of us to make a difference. So I challenge you to start today.
Great. So tonight it's going to be a mixture of talking about the Municipal Climate Action Plan, what's in it, and also ways we can make individual actions that support that work. The Climate Action Plans covers what the municipality can do, and that is 4% of the climate emissions in this town. So it's really important that we support what the municipality is trying to do and that we all activate ourselves individually as businesses, as residences, and do what we can as well. So climate change is here, as I think we all know. What can we do? And I don't probably need to tell anybody here, particularly after last summer, that we are seeing the impacts all over the state. We have a rise in wildfires. I've never in my time in Anchorage seen a wildfire come as close to my house as it did last summer, but we have them all over the state. We have threats to our fisheries with what's happening into our waters. Our obviously snowfall is changing more into rain, as we are seeing as we speak. We are bracing for invading parasites and ticks and other kinds of invasive species. We have beetle damage to our spruce and other trees. Anyway, you know probably much of this information about what's actually happening. So tonight we're going to focus, of course, on solutions. A climate action plan, which we just created, is a strategic roadmap for measuring and reducing greenhouse gas emissions and preparing for the impacts of climate change. So it's both trying to reduce our impacts and also prepare ourselves for the inevitable impacts that are coming our way. The municipality collaborated with the University of Alaska, to create it, and it was passed by our municipal assembly in May of this year. Who has a climate action plan? We're an incredibly good company. There's people moving all across the U.S., cities and states, to create their own climate action plan, and people, of course, working internationally. We're part of a number of partnerships that people will speak about in a bit. And also all over Alaska, folks are working on plans. Some of them are just adaptation. How do we deal with or prepare for the impacts that are happening to us that are climate related? And others are also looking on ways to reduce our impacts through mitigation. So we're going to move right into our panel. I'm going to start off with Mara Kimmel. I think many of you know her. She is many things, but she's also the Alaska Anchorage Mayor's Office lead on the resilience and welcoming initiatives, as well as, at least formally, a professor of political science at UAA. So, welcome, Mara.
Well, I have to say that this is amazing, and this has been an incredibly long journey, and I know that this is the beginning, but to acknowledge each and every one of you here tonight, and to also be aware that many, many of you have been with us throughout this entire process and even before. So I'm just going to give a little bit of background as to why we've gone through this trouble and why we've developed a climate action plan and why it is that our time is now. And to do so, it's really to tell the story about Anchorage. And it's really to tell the story about a city that is persistent, that is a city that depends on partners and each other, that is a city that's trying really hard to be welcoming, and a city that by doing all of those things is building our resilience. So we're sitting up here at the gateway to the Arctic, at the top of the world, and we are facing pretty dramatic transformation. We see it every single day, like Libby mentioned. We're seeing changes to our environment, obviously. We're seeing changes to our economy as we're looking past oil and we're looking into potential new opportunities for ensuring that we can all continue to live a life that we've become accustomed to. And then finally, we're really experiencing some pretty profound changes in equities. And what I mean by that is our population has been dramatically transforming over the last few years. Libby did a land acknowledgement to start off our evening, and it's really, really important that, again, we acknowledge the fact that we are not only occupying the lands of the Dena'ina Athabascan, but there are so many incredible lessons to be learned. We've all been welcomed, us who are non-native, who are non-indigenous. I've been welcomed into this place, and so it is my responsibility to make sure that people not only feel welcomed here as well, but that we have a sense of belonging as a community. We speak over 100 languages in our schools. We have some of the most ethnically diverse schools in the country. We have one of the most ethnically diverse census tracts. There's power and there's also challenge in those equities. And so when we were setting out to create our climate action plan, we really wanted to make sure that this plan was going to be rooted in the community values that we hold so dear and why we're so proud to be Alaskans and to be Anchorage residents. And I think that some of the reasons that we're so proud of that is because we know that change is a steady state in our community. We're always getting ready. This time of year, we're changing our tires over, we're changing our shoes, we're changing our clothing. We know this. This is the way that we live. What's different now is the rapidity of the change and the things that are coming our way we're not sure about. And we've really got to make sure that we're all safe and we have the ability to survive through some of these dramatic changes and to thrive through them. We know that place matters. We're all proud Alaskans. And it's really that connection with where we live and our place that informs a lot of what we do. And we also really rely on each other, as I said earlier. We've got to, we have so many different cultural values and viewpoints in here, in our city and in our state, and coming together really enables a much broader range of opportunities for us. When we make sure that everybody's voice and everybody's vision can be heard and can be actuated, it just gives us so much more hope and opportunity. And then finally, we're Alaskans. We do things our way, and we do things to make sure that we're all safe and secure. We are self-reliant. We're both independent, and yet we're interdependent on each other. All of this together combines to build what we're calling resilience in our community. And resilience being the ability to make sure that as we're facing chronic stresses and acute shocks, the earthquakes, the wildfires that were described earlier, all of those things that we can not only survive through them, but that we can thrive through them. That's a really, really important component. And so as we set out to do the climate action plan, Actually, this product, this city policy is rooted in 2 different values frameworks that the city's been working on since our mayor became mayor in 2015. One was a strategic welcoming roadmap where we outline the different ways that we believe that our diversity can be a strength and an opportunity. And through a community-wide process that involved a similar number of people that were engaged in the Climate Action Plan, we identified some key values of equity, inclusivity, and justice as driving forces behind developing the community that we want to become. And from that, we then developed a resilience roadmap where we looked at our diversity as a strength and as an asset to make sure that we can survive and thrive through the chronic stresses and acute shocks that we know we'd be facing. And so through all of these roadmaps, we set forth some different paths, one of which is what we're here tonight to discuss. But I also want to mention another piece that is absolutely critical in terms of understanding how we can all come together and how we can erode the barriers to making sure that these partnerships can be effected. And one of the things that we've done recently, and one of the outgrowths of both the welcoming and the resilience plan, is to make sure that language is not a barrier. I said earlier that we speak over 100 different languages in our streets and in our schools. And we need to make sure that everybody can get access to the critical information that we're going to need as we face some of the impacts of climate. And so one of the things that we've been able to do since Ethan took office is we've been able to make sure that the city's frontline service providers, the police department, the fire department, the health department, the Office of Emergency Management, all have documents and the capacity to make sure that language is not a barrier for people who need to get help. And so we're incredibly proud of that as we look toward building a more inclusive community. And I think that that inclusion and that sense of outreach and that sense of engagement really drove the way that this climate action plan was developed. And Micah and Shayna are going to talk a lot more about how we did this and then what we're doing and what we're all doing. But I just want to end my comments by thanking everybody in this room for coming tonight. And again, thanking the people that have been a part of this process since the beginning. I want to give a special super duper call out to Libby Roderick, though, because actually this process started in 2007 when Libby inspired a group of professors at the university to think about the way that climate is going to impact on our lives. And from that, a group of students took it upon themselves to develop the city's first ever climate action plan, and it didn't really go anywhere. And we picked it up 10 years later, and tonight we're all here as a result. And so that's what I mean by we are a community of persistence, and we are a community of partnerships. Because this would not have been able to be done. The city would not be able to do the work it has set out to do if it weren't for amazing, inspiring people like Libby and like Micah and all of our community partners that the city relies on, and including each and every one of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mara. Micah Hahn's going to speak next. She's at UAA, Institute of Circumpolar Health Studies, and talk a little bit more about how the plan got developed and ways you can get involved in terms of your own impact.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you so much, Libby. Okay, so as Libby mentioned, I have 2 tasks tonight. The first of which is to tell you a little bit more about how the Anchorage Climate Plan came to be. So we had a steering committee that was made up of university and municipal staff, and we worked together to sort of create the framework for the Climate Action Plan. We recruited the members of our advisory committee as well as our working group members. We hosted the technical working sessions for the plan, and we also hosted a number of community meetings throughout the plan development process. Our working group members really developed the bulk of what we call the actions in our Climate Action Plan. And we had almost 70 working group members across these 7 sectors. And these were folks from the university, from the municipality, local businesses, community organizations, or state and federal agencies who had subject matter expertise in one of these areas. And then finally, our advisory committee was a much smaller group of people, including the chancellors from UAA and APU, local community organizations, and the business community. And these were folks who weren't necessarily represented in our 7 sectors, but we really wanted their input and thoughts on sort of the big picture plan. And so these folks reviewed the plan throughout the plan development process and gave us feedback really through the lenses of equity and economic prosperity. So essentially, they read our proposals and thought, does this make business sense for the municipality? And also, is the way that the plan is written really making sure that it's providing benefits for all Anchorage residents? One of the most fun parts of developing the Climate Action Plan was thinking of creative ways to get Anchorage residents involved in the development of the plan. And throughout the plan process, we hosted a number of community events. At the beginning, it was more, folks had an opportunity to brainstorm and say, these are the types of things that I would like to see in this sector. And as the plan development progressed and we had draft recommendations, folks actually had the opportunity to give us feedback on specific actions or identify gaps to say, hey, you guys are totally missing this thing that's really important. And then finally, we had a formal public comment period where individuals had the opportunity, everyone here in this room had the opportunity to download the whole plan, read it from cover to cover if they chose to, and then provide us comments. So by the time we presented it to the Anchorage Assembly in May of this year, over 1,300 Anchorage residents had engaged in some way in the development of the Climate Action Plan. Okay, and so then my second task, I want to switch gears a little bit. And before I turn it over to Shayna to tell you what the municipality is doing around climate change in Anchorage, I want to talk a little bit about why I think a lot of you guys are here tonight, which is wondering how can Anchorage residents get involved in the Anchorage Climate Action Plan. And we thought we would take this opportunity to present you guys with a tool that you can take home to assess your own personal environmental impact. But even more importantly, what this tool will allow you to do is to identify practical strategies that you can implement in your own lives to address your personal carbon impact. So who has heard of this idea of an ecological footprint? I have a few students in the audience, and I know they have. Okay, it's cool. So it's not totally foreign. So this is basically a way that we can measure human impact on our Earth, on our planet. And what's really cool about ecological footprints is that this concept is scalable. You can measure ecological footprints at the global level, or at the national level, at a community level, or importantly for you guys, at an individual level or a household level. And as this idea of ecological footprints has become more common and sort of used in everyday language, a number of online ecological footprint calculators have started to develop. And I've looked at a number of these footprint calculators for use in some of my classes at the university. I encourage you to explore the wide world of footprint calculators, but for those of you who want the answer and the place to go, I really like this one. You can reach it at footprintcalculator.org. So I encourage you to take a note, write this address down, or put it into your phone. But wait, because it's going to take you a little while to answer all of these questions. So write it down so you can go home this weekend and have a discussion within your household about some of the questions that come up as you answer this footprint calculator. So footprintcalculator.org, and we can come back to this. But what I want to do is just walk you through sort of the interface so you can see what it looks like. So when you start the footprint calculator, it asks you a series of questions. So for example, how often do you eat animal-based products? And there's a little slider bar, and you can say anything from never to very often and everything in between. And one of the things that's really cool about this particular calculator is that it often gives you the opportunity to add details to improve accuracy, right? So if you click that little link, so on this question about animal-based products, it will bring up a new window. And here you can actually add a little nuance, right? Like it matters if you're eating beef or salmon, right? These have different ecological impacts. And so I think that by adding this additional information, it really gives you a final result that is much more tailored to your personal life and is more accurate than some of the calculators I've seen. So the footprint calculator will walk you through a number of questions around food, around housing, transportation and mobility, and also goods and services consumption. And after you finish answering all the questions, you'll get to 2 different results screens. And for the sake of education and learning, I'm using myself as a guinea pig. So I have filled out the footprint calculator. I'm about to show you my results, so please withhold your judgment. Please, yeah, right. Okay, so when I answered the footprint calculator, I found out that if everyone lived like me, it would take 3.2 Earths to support humanity. Like, that's not good, people. We're aiming for 1 here, right? We've only got 1 Earth. So I've got work to do, right? Like, I'm not perfect. There are things that I can do in my life to decrease my own environmental footprint. But this isn't that actionable, right? Like, I know, I cause a lot of carbon emissions. Great, what am I gonna do about it? Another really cool thing in this particular calculator is that if you click See Details, it breaks it out for you. So you can start to see what parts of your life are really driving your big footprint, right? And what do you guys see in my footprint? Okay, driving, so mobility, right? So again, like this is, again, not quite that actionable. So of course I was like, damn, mobility, okay, wait, what do I need to do? So I went back and I looked into the mobility questions and I thought, like, what is driving this, right? What is driving this? And it asked me how many miles per week I drive, the energy or the fuel efficiency of my car, and how often I'm flying, were some of the big questions that came up. I work pretty close to, I'm lucky to work close to where I live, so I bike to work most days. I said I drive less than 25 miles per week. I have a Subaru, 27 miles per gallon. Neither of these are amazing, but I thought, like, that's probably not what's really driving this. Let me look at air travel. How does that look? So the way that this calculator addresses that question is it asks you, how many hours per year do you fly? So to answer this question, I sort of did a back-of-the-envelope calculation. I thought, well, if I fly to the lower 48 4 times a year, I have to go for work and present at conferences. My family's in Tennessee. Maybe we go for vacation once. Okay, seems kind of reasonable. It's 3 hours to Seattle, another 5 to 6 to my final destination. That's about a 17-hour round trip. Times 4 is 70 hours per year for airplane travel, not including in-state travel. I do some of that too. So this is maybe even a low-end estimate for myself. So being a scientist, I thought, let's do an experiment. Okay, so 4 flights a year gets me 3.2 Earths, right? Could I cut that back? What if I cut it back to 1 flight a year? What does that do? So, we can use this tool to help answer that question. I went back to my answers. I erased 70 hours per year, and I put in 17 hours per year. How do you think that changed things? Any guesses? 1 Earth? How many Earths did I drop? Wow, a pretty big impact, right? Like over half. I was like, wow, if I want to do something in my life to impact my environmental footprint, like maybe I should be thinking about plane travel, which is hard for Alaskans. But, this isn't the only thing, though. I'll say, this was so much fun. I did one more experiment. I thought, okay, well, what about my house? Right now, my partner and I live in about an 850 square foot house. So it's pretty small. I got a pretty good score in my housing, but eventually maybe we'll decide this house isn't big enough for us, right? Everyone gets that feeling every once in a while. So what if we moved into a 1,200 square foot house? How does that change things? So I went back in my footprint calculator, I erased 850 square feet, and I put in 1,200 square feet. Redid my calculator. What do you think my Earth score was? 4? Anyone else? 3.5. So I increased about 1/3 of an Earth. I mean, guys, 1/3 of an Earth, that's pretty substantial. Let's not mince words here. So, obviously a lot of things go into a personal decision to buy a house. I mean, cost and location. But if this is something that's truly important to me, this will be a conversation that we have in our household when we're trying to think about, do we need a bigger house or do we not need a bigger house? So I guess the only thought I want to leave you guys with is that if you start to measure your ecological footprint, the beauty of this is that you can identify specific areas in your lives where you're having a big impact, right? And then I would encourage you to play around with tools like these to be able to, use data to make decisions about practical things that you can do in your own life to really decrease your personal carbon footprint. Okay, so I'm going to pass it back to Libby.
Thank you, Micah. And And I got one question card so far. I'm going to hold on to it because I'm pretty sure Shane is going to cover what you asked about to do with electric vehicles and what the municipality is doing to move in that direction. But I want to encourage other folks, if you have questions as we go along, again, just send them my way. So our third and final panelist is Shana Kilcoyne. She is the Energy and Sustainability Manager for the municipality in the Solid Waste Services Department, and she will really take us in a deeper dive into what's in the plan itself.
Thank you. So there are a couple empty seats up here next to some very lovely people, if anybody wants to sit down. So this was a huge effort, right, the Climate Action Plan, and we're really excited about having a complete Climate Action Plan. And I don't know if you guys have seen it. There's a couple of copies over here if you want to flip through it. It clocks in at a dandy 108 pages. So it's a lot. And can I see a show of hands? Has anybody read it? Okay, quite a few. This isn't bad. And so like Libby said, this is really a plan to, chart our goals towards reducing our emissions and preparing for the changes that we are already seeing. This Climate Action Plan is a foundational document. This is rich in historical text. This has narratives, it has science, it has sources. It's a really lovely plan. And it's a lot. And so you might be thinking, Shana, I don't have time to read a 108-page plan. That's fine. We've made it a little bit more accessible for you. We've got this lovely 12-page plan that is readable in one sitting. And our goal here was really to kind of identify what is the municipality going to do right away? What are the high impact actions that will make a difference right now in terms of preparing for climate change, in terms of reducing our emissions, and in terms of bettering the quality of people's lives? So that's what this document is about, and I do hope that you have a chance to look through it. You can go to www.muni.org /climate action plan to find both of these documents. So as has been stated earlier tonight, we're kind of melding these two things. The Climate Action Plan, when we say the municipality, we're talking about the local government. This was made by the people of Anchorage for the local government. So that is a small piece of the pie when we're talking about carbon emissions. And we're kind of bridging this tonight with what people can do in their daily lives. So we're going to go back and forth just a little bit. And we're also going to use that Menti tool, the online tool that we already tried once before. So if you have your phones handy, we're going to ask you a couple of questions throughout the presentation to get your immediate feedback. This is meant to be a fun exercise. There are some quizzes involved, but don't fret. We're not scoring you, and we're not going to show your results. So we've got a question here for you, and we're wondering, we're going to start with buildings and energy. We're wondering, have you done anything in your home to reduce your energy usage and your carbon emissions? So what you can do here is log back in, and your phone should automatically go to this page. You can click refresh if it has not. You can raise your hand if you're having some problems, and we've got some folks that can help you. You can click as many things as you want on here, and we're just going to watch them tally up. Lots of renters, good. I'm super excited that many people have changed their lights to LEDs. I'm going to talk about LEDs a lot. I can't stop myself. So, so this is really good. What we're seeing here is that a lot of people have done some of the really simple things, like changing out their lights, installing a programmable thermostat. 20% of you have done that. That's really great. And a whopping 6% of you have installed solar panels. 6% of the people in this room. That's really cool. Yeah. So I do want to say, for the renters, you might feel like you don't have much power, and that you can be in a weird position there. I will say that if you are going to be in your home for a year or two, you can change out your most frequently used lights to LEDs, and you can save money in that year or two. They are so much more efficient than incandescents and CFLs. I will also say that if you don't pay your electricity or heating bills, Well, you actually do through your rent. So if you have a good relationship with your landlord, you might want to start talking to them about making investments in your home and making it more comfortable for you. So, thanks. Yeah, I'm done. Micah's gonna go back and forth for me quite a bit here because we've got a handful of those questions for you. So on buildings and energy, I've already started to talk about it. Energy efficiency is literally my favorite topic. And so the municipality is really starting with the low-hanging fruit. What can we do to save taxpayer money and put that into other programs? How can we operate more efficiently? And I will say that Mayor Berkowitz commissioned a study a couple of years ago that identified about $3 million worth of savings in our municipal buildings alone. So we're targeting those right away. And that starts with lights. It starts with lighting controls. And when I talk about energy efficiency, I'm talking about ways to reduce our energy use and reduce waste without changing your behavior. So instead of asking people to turn off the light when they leave the room, we can install motion sensors and you don't even have to think about it and you will just save money. Who doesn't like that? So we're going off of this report. We know what best practices are, and we're really focused on saving energy in our facilities. But as noted, a lot of the energy use from within the municipality is going to be beyond municipal local government buildings. And so we want to work with residents, that's you, we want to work with you and make sure that you can do the same in your homes and in your businesses. That report identified about $80 million worth of savings in private, commercial, and residential buildings. So that is a ton of savings that could be used towards our daily needs, and towards expanding our businesses, whatever we want to do with that. So we're looking at ways to help you. You might be saying, yes, an on-demand hot water heating system sounds amazing, but I don't have the cash lying around for it. We're going to try to help you identify ways that you can do that so that you don't have to have the cash up front. If you're running a business, you maybe don't have that cash up front or you don't want to put it into this. We're trying to come up with more solutions for you for financial mechanisms, reducing those barriers and offering and looking at incentives, as well as strengthening our building energy standards. So there's a lot of things that we can do here. I have a little opportunity to brag here. We've done a lot, actually. The municipality has done a ton of energy efficiency. Solid waste services, that's where I work. We've done a large retrofit project, and we're saving about 40% in our administrative buildings, and that equates to about $32,000 over 2014 that we would be paying based on today's rates. So it's big savings, and that's just one facility. We've got solar panels. You all know that there's solar panels on the Egan Center, right? Excellent. We've also got solar, that's 75 kilowatts. It's a ton, it's 216 panels. And we've got solar panels on Fire Station 10 out at Rabbit Creek Road. Next year, we're putting 50 kilowatts out at the landfill. So we're gonna keep going. We're looking for more roof space. We're identifying even more spaces to do this. Okay, so our next activity is not Menti, but we're gonna ask something a little bit special this time. We're gonna ask you to say hello to a neighbor, take a minute to introduce yourself, and talk about what your commute is like, whether that's to work or to fun, to the gym, whatever you're doing. Talk about your commute and any challenges or successes that you have in reducing your carbon footprint throughout that commute. We're gonna give you 1 minute each. So say hello to somebody. I hope you meet somebody new and chat it up. Okay, please switch partners. The other person now. Talk about your commuting lifestyle. Okay, all right, that's a minute. Let's bring it back. Is there one brave person who wants to share what their commuting lifestyle is and any challenges or successes? Can you raise your hand if you want to share what you talked about? Preferably somebody with a loud voice. Yes. But like you bike commute. That's awesome. I'm gonna call. You try to. Yes. And behind? Great. They talked about the bus system and about how easy it is in different parts of town. Awesome. Great. Excellent. And one more.
We're starting to talk about helping the dealers move into offering electric vehicles.
Oh, yeah. Helping dealers move into electric vehicles. Good. We're going to talk about most of these things tonight. Excellent. So, transportation accounts for about 50% of our emissions in Anchorage and 25% of our emissions statewide. This is a big deal big challenge that we're dealing with. And it is a challenge. It's difficult. You know, we're used to cars. I will say that we are really excited about the plans that we're working on and developments which kind of get us away from that and offer a lifestyle that is a little more in line with commuting locally so that you do have options to take the bus or to bike to work. This transportation is about humans, and so this has to be about the options that we present. So if we're offering more bike-friendly roads and we're offering better transportation service, that needs to be the big part of the conversation. And you know what? Personal vehicles are going to be part of this conversation for a long time yet here in Anchorage. And so then we need to talk about electrifying our vehicle fleets and promoting energy efficient vehicles. We're not just going to say we all need to be biking and that's how we're going to do it. So this is people centered and it's a big task. One win that I am excited to share tonight is that our Metropolitan Transportation Association, AMATS, did in 2018 pass complete streets. And so that really expands the design of a street to a car-centered view to more of an inclusive view. So for walkers and public transit users and bikers. This is the Spinard Corridor, and I hope you've seen it. It's terrific. It's now got colored bike lanes, it's got wider sidewalks, and it's got safer cross sections. I always get stuck on this word. It's weird. So when we do talk about vehicles, it is really exciting. In fact, the automotive industry has dedicated about $300 billion in the last 2 years to electric vehicles. They see that this is where this is going. And so when you talk to people about, electric vehicles and whether that might be a part of their life, you hear a lot of people say, well, if I can't drive to Fairbanks, then, that doesn't work for me. And I hear you. I ask how many times you go to Fairbanks, because for me it's like once every 5 years. But I totally understand you want to feel confident that you can drive somewhere. And in the winter, you know that the car battery doesn't get you as far. And so improving our charging infrastructure is a big piece of that. So we are working towards an electric vehicle readiness plan with all the different entities on the road belt system. So from Fairbanks to Homer to Valdez, we're working with electric utilities, Department of Transportation, different municipalities and boroughs to develop a plan to make that charging system work so that you can connect to different communities. It's not going to happen all at once. We do have, the good news is, there's about $1 million that's ready that's almost ready to be put out in grants to go towards chargers. So we're getting closer, and there is going to be a lot of, I think, investment in the very near future. I want to point out real quick, this is, oh, I forgot to change. This is Sparkles. This is our solid waste services electric vehicle. She's very tough, and she's our first all-electric vehicle in the municipality. She's charging here at the ACDA parking lot on G Street and 6th. So if you haven't checked that out, it's really cool. You can charge for free. You just have to pay for parking like everybody else. So let's talk about garbage. This is a fun topic. We have a couple of Menti polls for you. So if you'll pull out your phones again, this is going to be a little bit of a rapid fire question. I've got a couple of questions about recycling, because when we talk about garbage, we actually are talking about how not to make garbage. So our first question is this number one plastic water bottle, is this recyclable? In Anchorage. And you can answer on your phone.
And while you're doing that test, I just want to remind you that if you do have questions on cards, just raise your hand and there are folks who will pick them up for you.
Okay, most of you are saying yes. And the good news is the number one plastic water bottle is definitely recyclable. You can recycle it in your cart, in your curbside pickup cart, or you can take it to a recycling center and recycle it. So you can keep it out of the landfill. Okay, our next one, is this item recyclable? I'm gonna go through these kind of quickly. Okay, most of you said no. Some are confused. That's okay. These are not recyclable due to the worldwide commodities markets. These are no longer recyclable, so you can either not buy them or throw them in the trash. Or reuse them for some other purpose, like holding your Christmas ornaments. Planting your seeds, that's good. Okay, this next one, this is a number 2 jug. Plastic jug, like you have for your detergent, your laundry detergent. Is this recyclable? A little less sure about this, but yes, this is recyclable. Yeah, make sure it's rinsed out, but yes, these are definitely recyclable. These are very valuable plastics, so don't throw them away in the trash. Okay, greasy pizza box. Now I want pizza. Okay, most of you are, this one's harder, I think. That greasy box is not recyclable. We do need to throw that one away, but if you have just a little bit of grease, you can put it in the recycling bin. I usually tear off the top and recycle half, throw away half. So, yeah, super fun nuance there, but we do our best. Okay, how about glass? Some people are like, this is a trick question. Awesome. Glass is recyclable. You cannot put it in your curbside composting, but you can take it to the recycling center. Do I have another one, or is that it? Oh, I have one on composting, because we have composting programs either curbside or you can do community composting. So we're wondering if these bones are compostable through the solid waste services composting program. Oh, they're not carrots, they're bones. They were talking up here about how they looked like carrots. That's right. So the composting program does not take any dairy or meat products, so keep it to your veggies and your fruit scraps and your yard waste for successful composting. Okay, so back to the presentation. Thank you for participating in the online poll. Recycling and composting can be confusing, and my colleague Susanna does a wonderful job of trying to make it clear. So you can go to our website on muni.org and find out exactly what is composting or what is recyclable and where to take it. And there's also some hot tips over here on the table. So in Anchorage, we go through about 1,200 tons of garbage every single day. And about 80% of that goes through Midtown through the central transfer station. So that's quite a bit. That means that we've got about 5 to 6 pounds of trash per person per day, and that's compared to the national average of 4.4 pounds. So we've got a bit of work to do. At Solid Waste Services, we're doing a lot to keep trash out of the landfill in order to extend the life of the landfill as long as possible. We've got this one landfill. We actually don't have a lot of other large spaces that can be used for our next landfill. So this is what we call our Doomsday Clock. And you can go online and say, okay, if we recycle all of our aluminum, how many more years of the landfill is that going to get us? So it's kind of just a fun tool that you can play around with. So we're also working on capturing more methane gas, which is a powerful greenhouse gas that we can turn into energy. At the landfill, we're collecting methane gas and we're selling it to JBER in the form of electricity. We are still flaring some, so we're looking for ways to expand those projects and make use out of that gas. Currently, we're able to create about enough electricity to power about 4,000 Anchorage homes that's going to JBER. So this is what we want to see more of and what we're trying to do. And we're also, you may have heard, building a new central transfer station so that we can pull more recycling and composting out of the facility. Our central transfer station, if you've been there on a Saturday, it wasn't built for what we've got here in Anchorage today. And it's a tight space, and we know that we need a bit more of an opportunity to offer the services that you deserve. So we are working on that. Let's talk about emergency preparedness. So this is a quick quiz for your phone, and I'm going to set you up and just talk about what we mean when we mean emergency preparedness. When we're talking about climate change, this is going to mean, unfortunately, more warm weather, so that will bring us more wildfires. We're going to see more extreme weather in the winter, we're also including earthquake preparedness, because those are kind of the three big extremes that we're expecting or can expect in the future. So the question is, not is this item compostable, but it is how many gallons of water per person should you have on hand for emergencies? What is the recommended amount? And this is a fast one. Yes. Per person. Just per person. 20 seconds. So 1 to 2 gallons, 5 to 7 gallons, 12 to 14 gallons. 10 seconds. Hey, all right. 5 to 7 gallons. So the recommended amount is a gallon per person per day, and the Office of Emergency Management for the municipality recommends that you're ready for 5 to 7 days. Nice job, everyone. Okay, so on health and emergency preparedness, like I said, we're preparing for more wildfires, unfortunately. What we saw this summer was that not only did we have really hot weather, but on top of that, we had bad air quality with wildfires. So that was really hard on us. We don't have cooling, right? And on top of that, we had to close our windows. And I had a hard time. That's our brief pocket of summer, and it was a challenge to stay indoors. So, how can we improve how can we be more prepared for that? And even in our homes, that means things like making sure that we're clearing brush and reducing chances and risks of wildfire in the first place, and reducing that ability for it to spread. It means that we're also looking at high-risk areas like places that don't have the infrastructure or the roads when there is a wildfire. So there's a couple of areas in our communities within the municipality that do have that situation, and we're trying to develop more roads for them so that people can travel out of there, and so that we do have the infrastructure that's needed. We are also, I'm really excited about this, improving language access to residents on climate change. What we found after the earthquake was that there was a lot of information, but there was some confusion, and certainly some confusion among people who don't speak English as a first language. So we got a small grant, and we've been doing some training with people who are leaders in our immigrant and our non-English native language communities. And so we've been working with them on emergency preparedness. And we're also doing translating materials for common messages after an emergency ahead of time, so that we are ready to go, so that we don't have that confusion and people know what to do and they can just move on with their lives. So we're really excited about that. Okay, we've got a quick question on food. This is a fun one that Mike is going to pull up. What is your favorite wild food or Alaska grown food? Libby says pizza. Awesome. So this is actually no surprise, right? We like a lot of the same things.
I love
Blueberries.
eating Minecraft also.
Salmon. I expected salmon to be enormous, so that's pretty on par, minus carrots. So thank you. That's just a fun thing that we talk about a lot in our office. So in terms of our food systems, we import about 95% of the $2 billion amount of food that we purchase here in Anchorage. So that's a lot. That means that, if we don't have access to our port, we don't have a lot of options. And so we've been talking about ways that we can improve local food options and encourage local food purchase. We already have about 200 community plots, and we are working on expanding that. And I don't know a more empowering way to feel that you are prepared than growing your own food for your family. So this is a really exciting thing that I'm glad that we're a part of. Encouraging farmers markets to accept payment for local food. That makes a lot of sense, right? And this kind of overlaps with our waste, but talking about a commercial compost program. So a lot of these sectors do tend to overlap within each other, and this is one of them. We've got another quiz question for you. Okay, this is a test. Which of these trees is an invasive? The serviceberry, bird cherry, hawthorn, or crabapple? You guys are good. This is a hard one, I think, especially if you're looking at the pictures. It is the bird cherry. The bird cherry is the invasive in this group, and it is hard to remove. You have to remove all of the roots for it, and so when you're thinking about, the ecosystem, if you want to go back, thank you. When we talk about urban forests and watersheds, this is really about a healthy ecosystem. So we do talk about things like invasives and how to keep those at bay. And we are talking about increasing recreational opportunities and quality of life. Not only that, things like our urban forests and our soils and our watersheds, those are actually a huge mitigation tool. Those can sequester a lot of our carbon. So this is really, quality of life. This is mitigation. This is everything packaged in one. Not to mention, we are working with APU to monitor the Eklutna watershed. Most of our drinking water and some electricity is coming from the Eklutna Glacier. So that's a really big deal when we're talking about a warming climate. I'm going to try to keep it going here. I've got one more sector. Actually, I'm going to stay on the slide quick. I wanted to talk about outreach and education. This is our 7th sector. It's such an important one. This plan is about you, and it is for you, and we can't do this on our own. The municipality is not able to do the leading that needs to be done to have the change that we need. And so this is about how we improve our communications with you and with our partnerships. We are developing an online climate action website so that you can follow along with the work that we're doing, and potentially you'll be able to participate in that conversation online. when we think about encouraging education in energy and the development of career, that is a huge piece of it. We really need to keep this going for students and people looking for good paying jobs. And so we're working with partners on this. The municipality isn't going to do it all. Our friends, for example, at Renewable Energy Alaska Project are working on energy education and career pathways. These are about partnerships. So if you want to partner with us on these things, we need you and we need to hear from you. I wanted to point out there's also an opportunity over here to share ideas. And now we'll pull up the very last mentee poll. So last question. And Common Ground and the municipality and all of our partners want to hear from you, and we want to know what you want more information on and what you want to learn more about in order to empower yourselves to reduce your carbon footprint. So if you would just type in a question that you'd like to learn more about, they will pop up, but it won't say your name or anything. So we are collecting these, and we're going to be able to then follow up with you and offer what we can on this. Oh, Micah, you got...
Shayna is awesome.
Definitely some travel ones, federal legislation, that's good. Incentives, energy efficiency, awesome. Public transportation, winter season, farmers market, year-round food storage, community building projects. I definitely see some mass transit ones, and I want to point out that I hope you all watch for the People Mover report card that's coming out in January, because they have kind of refabricated their ridership system, and I hope that you have heard about this, and their numbers are going back up, and I'm so excited for that. Green roof, solar panel, Minecraft, I don't know what this is. I should know. Okay, so I have just a couple more things to talk to you about really quick. You, I hope, are asking yourself, that's all fine and dandy. You're talking about all of these things that you want to do. I've barely scratched the surface of what is in the Climate Action Plan, so I do hope you'll take a look at it. But it's about how we implement it, right? And implementation is really about leadership and accountability. We are working on, through the Climate Action Plan, you'll see kind of a two-pronged approach. Mayor Berkowitz has already developed the Resilience Subcabinet. This is many of the municipal employees who are working together to implement the plan. This is not just me implementing a huge plan. This is many municipal employees working together to do their part within their department to make the municipality better. And we're also reporting on those successes and on those challenges and learning from each other. So we are meeting quarterly. I'm really excited about the sub-cabinet. It's been a really fun group to work with. Externally, as the other part of the plan, is the Anchorage Climate Action Council. And the idea here is that this is an external body that is made up of university members, municipality members, businesses, tribal corporations, nonprofits, all working together to kind of guide and give feedback to the municipality while we continue to implement this plan. So these are two really important pieces as we move along. Now you're wondering, next, I think, what about measuring your success? Well, we are working on this. Our measurements and our metrics are going to go on the website. This is really a challenge. You ask yourself, what can we measure and what should we measure? How do we measure it? So there are many things we can measure, and this is still a work in progress, but we're trying to figure out in terms of buildings, what we've been doing, how many facilities we've retrofitted, what kind of renewable energy we've generated. These are just some examples. On transportation, we want to know how much bike and pedestrian infrastructure we've added, public transit ridership, and EVs in the fleet. Each one of these will have goals so that we'll be able to see where we're at on the spectrum. If we're meeting our goals, we're getting closer to this beautiful blue skies image, and if we're not, we need to know that, and we need to do better. On waste, we've got waste converted to energy, how much is composted, how much is recycled, and per capita waste reduction. So thank you so much for your time. Libby is going to take over again, and we want to leave you with, asking yourself, what am I going to do to be a part of this? And what are my next steps? Because this is all about you. So thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. So we're going to dive right into the questions. There are more questions than we have time. And so we've tried to bundle them as best we can. But after we're here, you still have an opportunity to ask the questions of folks who are in the room. We'll pay attention to these questions and see if we can answer them in some other way than just tonight. So one of the first ones is, how is the municipality preparing for drought? Portland, Oregon prepared for the drought and did much better than the rest of the state. Because of lack of snowpack, lack of snow, the Eklutna Glacier shrinking, groundwater is decreasing. Are we doing any kind of rain catchment plans?
We definitely have, we do have some rain catchment plans, and there's the, yeah, that's what I was, yes, oh, I forgot to talk about the stormwater utility. We are working on a stormwater utility, and there is a service to look at rain gardens for your home and take some of that runoff and use it in your lawn. I mean, a simple thing that you can do as a resident is use a rain barrel to water your lawn. I did see a lot of people using sprinklers this summer. This was the worst drought I think we've ever had. So this is something that is still evolving for the municipality, and we, I think after the summer, realized it's something we've really got to take seriously. So it's definitely a work in progress. But yeah, the stormwater utility I'm super excited about because it's currently kind of a hodgepodge, and we really need to make sure that we're treating that correctly.
Awesome, thank you. There were several questions to do with walkability and bikeability in the city. One of them had to do with safety, that there's quite a number of people on the bike trails that are living there now or camping or what have you, some concerns about that. Concerns about making the sidewalks more usable all year round. I imagine that has to do with ice and snow questions. And also whether or not police are enforcing car behavior to protect people who are biking and walking. So I know you won't know the answers to everything, but we'll give you a try.
I mean, this is a huge issue. I'm a bike commuter too, and it can be scary, and sometimes you cannot ride on the road even though you're supposed to, and sometimes you cannot ride on the sidewalk, especially in the winter if there's snow. So there's definitely a couple of things that we're doing. There's an effort to collaborate better between the municipality and the Department of Transportation to make sure that the sidewalks are plowed. It can be tough to get to a people mover bus stop, let alone bike to your destination. So I want to address these. These are definitely a part of the plan. These are a part of what we're working to implement. I'm trying to think if Sure. I think the mayor wants to say something, is what I'm being told.
Jump, if you want to, jump up to the mic, but do it quickly because we got a lot of questions.
Good eye.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, these three are fantastic, and none of this would have been possible without them. So thank you all. We do have a drought plan in effect. We're looking for additional aquifers to drill on. We used, during the height of the summer, we're using 50 million gallons a day as opposed to normally 25 million gallons. Is something we're aware of and we're conscious about. This last question was about whether the police are enforcing to make sure that the roadways are safer. Well, I wish we had more cops because then we could do more enforcement. We have about 430 cops in the city. We need about 700. We would do more enforcement and things would be better if that were the case. What was the other piece of that question?
Snow and ice removal.
Oh, sidewalks.
Was one.
So our son Noah is here. If the sidewalk is unplowed, is it a state road or a municipal road? Noah? State road. Yeah, those are state roads. So most of the unplowed sidewalks are on state roads. And oftentimes what will happen is the municipality will do something, they will plow a sidewalk, and then the state graders will come by and berm over it. And this is a consequence of the state budget cuts, and if you want safer roads, then you need to have a state fiscal solution, and I hope that Common Ground gets to that later on.
Next forum. Let me throw, before you go, Ethan, One more question in that regard had to do with permitting of development right next to the bike trails and the roads, and I'm not sure if that comes to you either, if that's a state question. It looks like development is being permitted when we say we want to encourage bikeability and walkability, but nonetheless, people are building and developing.
So one of the things we want to have is more neighborhood cohesion, more walkability, more accessibility, because that's really important, not just in terms of developing a smaller carbon footprint. People want to have neighborhoods that they can walk through, have coffee at, and get their grocery shopping done, but it's also safer, because one of the great studies that has occurred over time is that when neighborhoods are walkable, they are more resilient. And when bad things happen, those resilient neighborhoods are much more capable of absorbing the acute shocks and the chronic stresses. Did I get that right, Mara? Okay, good. I'm trainable, apparently. So that makes a huge difference, and so we want to have more neighborhood cohesion, and that means we need more walkable cities. You're seeing this downtown. We want to do things with more mixed use, so that you have retail downstairs and apartments upstairs. There's Elizabeth Place up the street here. We want to have more of those kind of denser housing, and those are options that will make Anchorage a more livable city. They'll also... Well, so there's a whole lot of studies on what you need in terms of wider sidewalks, and in terms of you want to make sure that the sidewalks and the streetscapes are something that are interesting as people walk up and down the streets. You need to have a variability in terms of what people see when they walk up and down the sidewalks. You look at some of the big cities across the country. Anyone been to New York City recently? Anyone walk on Broadway? Okay, not just perform on Broadway, but walk on Broadway. And so what happens then is when you take the cars out of the equation, things become more walkable. You have more good activity, and good activity will crowd out bad activity. So these are all components of being a carbon smart city, but also a more livable city.
Great, thank you. This question has to do with, because of the drought, the number of dead and stressed trees that are now all around Anchorage. Are there any plans to clear them to reduce wildfire risk this coming summer?
Y'all, these are hard questions because I don't know of all of our plans and all of what we're doing in the municipality. As far as clearing these, this is a huge issue because this exacerbates the issue with wildfires if we have a lot of dead trees, and it is a cost to residents if they have to take down their own trees. But I don't know if we have a program for that right now.
Okay.
You can call the city to get an assessment of your. You can call fire. You can call AFD to get an assessment of your property, and then you can figure out. And I'm not sure if there's any funding available to help you take down some of the trees a little bit, but it's a really good idea to do that.
I think the question had to do with the trees that aren't on private property, but we can think about that later. Okay. Is there a battery collection point in Anchorage?
Yes, you could go to the hazmat collection point at the Central Transfer Station or at the regional landfill. Thank you, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Thank you, Megan. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, you can go and drop off your hazmat. And I think it's up to 40 pounds free, and that includes oils and paints and anything else you might have that is hazardous.
Okay, bus-related question. Two of them, it looks like. Are there plans for bus rapid transit on the Seward Highway? And why doesn't the city run smaller buses given the ridership?
We are running some smaller buses. Rapid transit on the Seward Highway. We're more leaning towards shared transit in vans, and that actually has been increasing quite a bit, so I'm excited about that. And I assume public transit is looking at those numbers, and if small buses are going to be required, then they can step in, but I don't know the detailed answer to that.
Okay. Does the municipality have a plan to purchase wind power from Siri?
Do we have a plan to purchase wind power from Siri? I haven't talked to Siri about expanding the Fire Island Wind Project, but I think that's a great suggestion.
quite a lot of more questions about the plans the city has for purchasing and using electric vehicles for the Muni, for the school district. There's any number of questions about that.
Okay, good. Lots of interest in electric vehicles. This is good because this is really the way that the future is. And so we expect that we're going to see dozens of thousands of electric vehicles on Anchorage roads in the very near future. And the municipality is very interested in getting on board with that. So we're looking at life cycle costs. So what does it cost to own a vehicle throughout the life? Because when you look at gas versus electric, we're starting to already see savings. There's huge maintenance savings. And frankly, a lot of our municipal vehicles, they don't even drive out of town. They're not even driving to Eagle River. So we don't need to be concerned about where charging stations are. Of course, we're putting mission first. So if it's a police cruiser or something that needs to be able to run, as far as possible and then gas up really quick, we're not going to start there, but there are a lot of obvious ones that we can start with. And I will add that APD is receiving 20 hybrids that are expected to pay back for themselves the difference in costs in about 1.2 years, I believe, or maybe 1.5. And a lot of that is just when they're idling. They're not using gas.
I just want to add one thing on that. Not so much the wind power generation, but the city is looking now at developing a waste-to-energy plant, which would be one of, I think there's 71 or 77 around the country right now, so not very many of them. And we're working with all of the communities along the rail belt to do this. So we're constantly looking at new sources of energy as well.
Great, we're charging along here. We'll get to as many as we can. How can we, average citizens, encourage local businesses and corporations to make a change in this area?
How can we as local businesses?
How can average citizens encourage local businesses and corporations to make a change
cool.
in this area?
Yeah, how can average citizens? Businesses that are doing this, I hope that they are talking about it because consumers want this. And it's proven that businesses such as REI that are kind of going the extra mile and looking at a triple bottom line. So not just what is my profit, but also what am I doing for the planet and what am I doing for my community? Those businesses, people are loyal to them. And so I think if you've got some businesses that you frequent, I would share that you'd like to see them, look into solar on their businesses. You'd like to see them install LED lights because it will save them money. And we are working with Anchorage Downtown Partnership, and so we're going to offer some resources for businesses to make it easier and give them a little bit of information on that.
Great. I just want to add another thing too. So if you are a part of a nonprofit organization, the city joined a group of cities around the country that are expanding to include nonprofits in other sectors called We Are Still In. And this is a great way for our community and all of the voices in our community to register the fact that we are still committed to the Paris climate targets. So go back to wherever you work and see if your company or your nonprofit agency is eligible to sign on to We Are Still In. And our city is one of those communities.
Couple quick recycling questions. One of the question is, where does the recycling go from the recycling center? Is there really a market for recycled materials, and should we be separating our recyclables?
So a couple of things there. The global market definitely shifted. You might have heard that we are not able to just ship our recyclables out like we used to for a real cheap price. And so that meant that the commodity prices shifted. And so we're still grappling with that. Some of those we do ship out a lot of our recycling, and we're shipping them out on empty ships. And we are considering the cost of what the expansion expanded lifetime of our landfill is again, because that needs to be included in the full calculation. And so we have concluded that yes, it is definitely worth it to ship those recyclables out. And so in the lower 48, those are being separated and then reused. So the commodities markets are still shifting. We believe that they're going to slowly bounce back, and so we're watching that. I'm not the recycling expert, but we are also looking at a facility that will filter those out here in Anchorage, and it seems like that it could work for us financially. So we're definitely exploring that option right now.
Great. We're actually getting very close, so I'm going to go for it here. Whoever asked the question about FedEx and bioaviation fuel, I checked with folks. We didn't know the answer, so check with me, and we will follow up with you afterwards. Then there are a couple of questions to do with taxes. One has to do with, is there any consideration of a carbon tax and returning the proceeds to everyone as a dividend? This would be a local version of what's being proposed nationally by the Citizens Climate Lobby.
The local version, it's something that actually we have talked to BP about, and they've kind of helped us. We've done a little bit of research there, but I think that we should do more. I personally believe that we need a federal carbon financing mechanism, and it would be great if it does go back to the people. And some of those ones that we're looking at can really help people and leave them better off than they were, while accounting for the externalities that currently there's no price on.
The actual proposed legislation at the federal level, called the Energy Innovation Bill, I believe, was modeled in part on the Alaska Permanent Fund Dividend program. So check it out. Two quick things. You're not a tax expert either, but California Vehicle Rebate Program provides tax breaks to make it easier to afford electric vehicles. And another one says, could we have a tax on less efficient vehicles? Do we have any plans for tax-related things to do with vehicles?
So at a city level, I don't believe that we have at this point thought of that. I will also just add, I used to be on the state's climate action leadership team. That went away. So that's another thing you can all do, is make sure that you let your state legislature know and legislators know that this is something that, even though Anchorage and the communities that we put up there on the screen are actively doing things, these are not things that we can do in isolation. It is really, really important that our states step in and step up and make sure that they're coordinating the work that these communities are really doing, because we are right now doing the heavy lift community by community, and there would be tremendous benefit if we could get some statewide systems in place to assist us.
Obviously worth voting for people who support this work. So the last question, well, there are two parts to it, but what can Anchorage citizens do to facilitate the implementation of the Climate Action Plan? And what municipal actions could have the most impact? I know we had quite a lot of conversations about that during the creation of the plan. The second part is what municipal actions could have the most impact? And the first one is, what can all of us as Anchorage citizens do to facilitate implementation of the plan?
Well, I'll address the first part of that question. I think, so I come at this from the university side, and so we did a lot of work in working with the Muni to develop the Anchorage Climate Action Plan, and now I really see, I see my role at the university and also as an Anchorage resident is really helping pushing this forward. And I think that, what we do at the university is talk about it a lot. I mean, over and over again, people are showing that making this a regular part of conversation and breaking down barriers so it's not a political issue, it's just part of our everyday lives, is really what's going to lead to people having productive conversations about this. So, in a lot of my classes, we always talk about climate communication and thinking about, if you were to discuss this issue with your neighbor, your grandmother, a friend at school, thinking about from their perspective, how are they coming to this issue, and what is the lens they're using to talk about climate change? And then rather than just telling them your perspective, really try to meet them where they are. So if they're really interested in shiny new things, electric vehicles is maybe a really great thing to talk about. Or if they want to save money because they are a grad student and they have no money, talking about energy efficiency and how they could save money in their home is really where you should start that conversation. So I think from the perspective of a resident, the thing that you can do is really spread the word and make climate change a regular topic of conversation with everybody that you talk with.
Let me also add that the Climate Action Plan will be reviewed once a year. There will be a progress report that comes out online and for the public, and we want people to then weigh in at that point. As was mentioned, there will be an external body that is sort of trying to track and help support the implementation of this. And it actually does matter, of course, who is the mayor in the town as to whether or not this thing actually continues to have traction. So we can all think about that. Someone asked also what's the timeline for implementation of the plan. The timeline is from now on. But as Shana mentioned earlier, the municipality has developed a high impact strategy for the most immediate things that they are working on, and you can get, I think, a copy of that online as well. So we have come to the end of the time we agreed to. What I would like to do is close with your voices. So if you would indulge us one more time, turn to a neighbor, take a minute apiece, and think about a step that you can take when you leave here to move things forward, both in terms of your own impacts as well as supporting the Climate Action Plan. The research shows that if we do even one small thing, we are much more likely to do more things. If we see the people around us doing things, we are much more likely to do things. And if we publicly say we're going to do it, we are much more likely to do it. So if you would just indulge us, take a moment, turn to somebody maybe new, a minute on what you will do when you leave. Okay, why don't you wrap up your thinking? We will be able wrap up your thinking and come back for the closing, please. We will be able to stay in this room and continue talking after we close, but I would like to hear from a couple of people what you are thinking that you are going to be able to do. I'd also like to mention that there are apparently a lot of ideas out there that didn't make their way to me, and there are places to write them up here on the board. We really, really, really want and need ideas and suggestions from our community, so please don't leave without doing that. Hey. So I'd like us to close by just hearing from a handful of people about what you're going to do when you leave. Stand up and project. Feed a billionaire? Bike, bike, bike. Great, thank you. Yeah. Nice. It's awesome. Wow, that's awesome. So he is meeting with his friends and neighbors on a monthly basis to figure out what they can do in this arena, and he came just to get inspiration from what everyone else is doing and the community is doing. That is fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
A couple other people? What are we going to do? Small or large, it doesn't matter. Say that again? Carpool more. Awesome. Couple more.
Find one day a week when I can ride my bike instead of using my car.
Excellent. One day a week she can bike instead of using her car. About go to an Alaska Common Ground meeting. Great. Well, that's a great way for us to close. There will be more of these meetings coming, as was mentioned. Please sign up if you want to hear about them. And the last thing is someone just sent up a question that had to do with how to stay optimistic. And my response to that is to join with other people and take action. It's called active hope. And the theory behind it, for me at least, is that the best way to predict the future is to create it, right? Which is what we're doing now. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you to our fabulous panel, our mayor. And stick around. We'll keep talking.
I just want to quickly, on behalf of the board of Alaska Common Ground, thank everybody for coming, and thank our panelists, and thank Libby for hosting or moderating the event, and also thank our committee that actually put this together, members of Alaska Common Ground, and also remind you that we have an event coming up here on Tuesday, December 10th, 7 p.m. here to talk more about Alaska's fiscal situation, what kind of Alaska do we want, and on Tuesday, February 4th, we'll have an event here to talk more about climate change with an open house showcasing organizations working on climate change issues. If you haven't already signed in, make sure you sign in so you're on our mailing list. Again, thank you everybody for coming, and again, let's hear another big round of applause for our three panelists who put this together and for Libby, and have a good evening.